Welcome to Reading Crossbow. My name is Rob, and today I'm doing the midpoint review of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This was a book selected by Lana, which is why I'm doing the midpoint review. If this was a book I had selected for us to read, she'd be the one doing the midpoint review. So, since she selected this book, I kind of have an expectation that this is a fantasy romance of some kind. So let's see how it does on that front. At the start of the book, the main character, and also the only point of view character, Violet Sorengale, is about to go to her nation's war college on conscription day. During conscription day in this country, people volunteer or are forcibly conscripted to join the nation's military. These conscripts get split into 4 groups: warriors, healers, dragon riders, and scribes. The main character, who was born with this condition where she has weaker joints and more brittle bones than your average person, grew up most of their life. She expected to be a scribe, not really a warrior type. Her father was also a scribe. Within the last few years, her father and her brother had passed away, and her mother, a general and dragon rider, has told her that she will volunteer to become a dragon rider. Now, the book makes it very clear that becoming a dragon rider is only for volunteers. People who have been conscripted, they will go into the military or go into just the warrior faction, or they can try out for maybe the scribes or the healers. But the dragon riders do not take conscripts. So it seems kind of interesting that she's kind of being, while not legally conscripted, her mother is conscripting her to become a dragon rider. And as she is a general in the military, she's made it clear that if Violet changes her mind and tries to sneak into the scribes, she will drag her back out and put her into the dragon riders quadrant of the college. So Violet has committed herself to making the best of this. It was actually a pretty strong start. The book got off to good action, a lot of complicated interpersonal relationship with her mother and her sister, who is also a dragon rider. So as the story starts, and she arrives at the school, that's when the story really does take a dark turn. And where my interest in this fantasy romance started to peak, or perk up, because the first thing they have to do is cross something that they call the parapet. Now, it's not a parapet in the traditional sense, it's just more of the proper noun for what is a very narrow bridge over a 200-foot drop, where the wind can just push you off, where you can slip and fall. And this is supposed to be an initial challenge to see if you're actually worthy of being a dragon rider. If you're riding on the back of a dragon, you need to be able to handle winds that would push you off. So this is kind of the first test to see if you're worthy of being a dragon rider. The first thing that happens as she's starting to make her crossing is this storm seems to have just gotten here a lot faster than what was expected. They knew a storm was kind of coming today, but the character believed that if she got up there early, she might be able to get there ahead of the storm when there'd be less wind and no rain and that kind of stuff. And yet the storm seemed to have got here a lot faster than expected. Now this is curious because they've already told you that her mother, who is a dragon rider, has gained a magical power from being a dragon rider where she can control storms. So I'm just sitting here like, whoa, this is a bit dark. Because now this is the first or second chapter of the book, so the character is able to make it across the bridge and doesn't die immediately at the start of the story. So not much of a spoiler. But since she was right at the very beginning of the line, you'd expect a whole bunch more people to get pushed off that bridge, more than normal, due to that storm. And yes, they do make it clear that it is a slightly larger than normal amount of people die. But that storm must have let up pretty quick, because some 300 people do manage to cross after her. And only, I think, 65 or so actually fell to their deaths. Now, that's already a pretty high body count for a romance book. And this is only chapter 2. So I'm thinking this is a pretty good start to this venture. So the story pretty much immediately proceeds as basically the character enters this school, and basically immediately, in fact, I've already passed the first outright murder in this book, because the students at this school are pretty much encouraged to murder each other, because by reducing the number of other students, you're improving your odds of getting to become a dragon rider. There's only they've allowed in almost like 350 students have made it into the school. And there's only about 100 dragons. And when you bond with the dragon, that's a 1-to-1 relationship. So that dragon, you're it. So if you can maybe knock off some of your competition before it even gets time for the choosing of the dragons, that's greatly improving your odds. So immediately it's pretty clear that this is a cutthroat society. And you can tell it's the society as a whole that's cutthroat, because as murders happen, like immediately, several like blatant homicides happen right off the bat. None of the other students really react all that strongly. Sure, the main character's horrified because she was expecting to be a scribe, but pretty much everyone else is like, man, that guy's kind of a bit much, but they're critical maybe of the killer's brute force, not necessarily for the fact that he just murdered someone in a practice sparring match. So it's pretty clear that already that this society is a little more grim than your average fantasy setting. Not, as I said, not only are no one really blinks an eye as someone's being killed, but also in the society, if someone dies, the expectation is you must burn all of their possessions. You can't keep anything from memorabilia. When someone dies, their name is read once, and then their body is burned or buried under a rock. And that's the last we shall discuss them. Additionally, about 5 years before the start of the story, there was a rebellion. There were several people who decided, or that rose in rebellion against the nation. That rebellion was put down, but the leaders of the rebellion were all executed. But their children had been forced to watch their parents' executions. Then they were all magically branded so that everyone would know that they are the child of a traitor. And then, despite the fact that the dragon riding school doesn't allow conscripts, all of those children are required to join the dragon riding. Now that seems unusual. Why would you want children of traitors who you have publicly shamed and essentially tortured to want to become masters of your nation's most dangerous weapon system. Because that's what these dragons are. These are weapon systems in a cold war against their neighboring country. Well, the reason why is pretty simple. Only about 1/4 of students in the Dragon Riders graduate. This was a death sentence, as I think it was for the main character. I think her mother set her up. But that's a theory that hasn't been proven out in the book. So, anyway, the book proceeds as basically the students are challenged to show that they are worthy of being dragon riders while being trained also to be officers in this nation's military. So, as far as the characters in this book, let's just give a broad overview. The majority of the characters in the first half of this book are generally described in about half of a sentence. Seems a bit light. Except for two members, two attractive people of the opposite sex, that the character does find to be attractive. They get a lot more description. A lot more. And in a world where the only smell that's ever described in the book is burning human flesh, those two characters do smell of something more pleasant. One smells of leather, mostly from their leather armor. The other one also smells like leather, but also smells like mint and citrus and just a hint of flowers. That one is also, considering they're in a military school, that one is specifically called out as being extra ripped. I mean, chiseled in every way. I mean, gutters. Chiseled. I mean, literal pages of description of how amazing this guy looks. Now this guy, on the other hand, he is, he's one of those traitors. So, main character really doesn't want anything to do with them. But, he's gorgeous. And he, seems to really care about his people and tries to help them be successful. Even tries to give her some pointed tips. And all she can really do is flip him a finger and be incredibly insubordinate considering he is her wing leader. This poor guy if you think about it, this entire society just looks down on him. And all of his people, the other children of traitors, they look up to him. He's the oldest one of them. He's the daughter of the head traitor, the head rebel. He is the son of the head rebel. So they all look to him almost as a father figure. So this being an orphan, surrounded by other orphans, in a society that hates him, he's got to be just so incredibly lonely. I mean, no wonder why he is so chiseled. He's got nothing else to do. I mean, damn, someone's got to f*** this guy. Well, if you want something done, better do it yourself.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Whew. So, if the book seems a bit light on the romance in the first half, how is this fantasy romance doing in the fantasy department in the first half? Well, I'd say pretty good. There's fucking dragons, and you got magic. And all of that sounds pretty solidly fantasy. Now, the magic system in this book is actually kind of interesting. It's actually part of the bonding with a dragon. So as a dragon rider becomes almost mentally and potentially like connected at a soul level with a dragon, they can gain the ability to channel magic through the dragon and cast magic. Now, pretty much everyone can cast the same kind of small spells like locking and unlocking doors, magical pencils, magical lights, like light fixtures. You can just kind of wave your hand and a light flickers on. And then they also get what they call the signet power. And the signet power is almost a unique ability that it's more like a superpower than a magical spell in the traditional sense. So, like someone might get the ability to read minds or control animate shadows, animate metal, like you swing your sword and the sword bends around like someone's shield and stabs them. So it definitely has it has more of that, to me, a superhero kind of feel. And apparently it's somewhat random, though there are reliable patterns of power. Some powers are more common than others. For example, there is some magical healing in this world. They call it mending. Mending is actually just a repair power. You can repair a broken cup. You mend it and it goes back to being a completed cup. You mend a person and you basically heal the damage from a wound. So far as don't know if that would help against something like a disease or poison. Probably poison. But at least but we don't know about maybe like disease or maybe cancer, something built in that's part of the person. But certainly it does repair injuries. Now, this is a pretty limited resource. So actually the majority of the school of healing is actually people just learning to be traditional healers, mixing medicines, bandaging wounds, performing surgeries. And that's actually the majority of the healing in this world. The mending is really only used for the most serious injuries. And probably only for the most important people, honestly. I mean, this society is incredibly cutthroat. But I've been kind of knocking on them a bit. I mean, they might be this bad because their enemy is so bad, right? Well, the enemy doesn't ride dragons. They ride griffins. If there's one thing I know, griffins are almost always the good guys. So you have a brutal society that encourages students at this war college to murder each other in a incredibly cutthroat attrition to see which ones can become essentially the leading caste of individuals in the society, that assigns children of traitors to essentially a virtual death sentence. I'm pretty sure the main character is going to get somewhere in the second half of this book, they're going to get a, are we the baddies kind of moment? I mean, sounds fun. So, I guess at this midpoint in the story, I'm actually pretty happy with this book. I would, if you are maybe a person that might have avoided this because it's, popular with the book talk crowd and the romance, and maybe you avoided it for that reason, I would say don't. This is at least so far, this is a solid fantasy read. In fact, it's actually got a lot of the grimdark qualities that I normally like in a fantasy novel. I'm actually looking forward to finishing this book and giving my final review. I even went ahead and just ordered the new book, which just came out, because I totally expect we're gonna be reading that, because this is a pretty solid read so far. So, I mean, good job, Lana. Proud of you.